Let me know if you can hear me. I can see there, man in the red cape. Hey, how's it going? Sorry, I immediately pressed the wrong button on the OBS overlay. I think I cancelled the stream as soon as I started it. How are you, man in the red cape? Thanks for being here. Oh, I just realised I'm not streaming my screen. Sorry, 1 second. There we go. That should be working now. Dix, hi. Welcome back. Good to have you on the screen. In the stream. How are you guys doing? I think a bit of a gory picture to start with today, but I've got a few things to go through. I'm going to try and do a lot more color today, because I feel like last time it was a lot of black and white. CR Binet, I think that's how you pronounce your name. Hi there on Twitch. Thanks for stopping by. I'm still trying to figure out stream tools in general. So eventually I'm going to have both. Oh. Can you not hear me? Maybe I've got the wrong microphone on. Let me check. I've got the right microphone. Can't really hear you. Your audio keeps cutting out. Is that the same? I'm not sure why. I'll try and speak a bit more into the microphone. Just let me know if that's better. Man in the red cape. Throndix, Ciobine, is the audio okay for you guys? I'm not sure if it's working perfectly. But yeah. So today the plan is to get essentially working on a bit more color stuff, like you can kind of see here. Okay, that's better. Perfect. Sorry, the microphone was a little bit away from my face. See, I've been in it. The audio is good. Okay, cool. Good for everyone now. The microphone was a bit far away from my face, so that's probably why. So yeah, we're gonna work on a bit more color today. I think oh nice. I'm gonna try and do some more Ranger stuff. Like you can see, I kind of started here this week. Everyone who was in the stream last time saw what we did, and it was essentially these 4 pieces. So we did the puffin, which was chosen by everyone on the stream. I think that was the character. Again, I'm going to work on these a little bit more in the future, but I think that was a good choice. Number 2 was, oh, if I can move it, was the toad. And again, I think that was just a random choice, because we love a good frog and a good toad on this stream. And we did the rabbit, which I'd already started before, but we worked on a little bit. So I think I quite like that one. He's got a bit more detail on his pouches and a couple of guns, which is always cool. And then the kingfisher as well, which, again, I think I started before the stream. And then kind of we worked out and managed to get most of the details done. Details in inverted commas by the end of the stream, which was good. So today I think we're going to be working on some of these other ones. I'll go through some of my images I've done since the last stream. So you can see there's a few here. And if I just select all of these, not very efficient. A few of these are really sketchy as well, so I apologize if they're not very interesting. This was one I started doing in my sketchbook. It's obviously like a woman with a pistol and a pre-tech arm. I quite like the messiness of the pre-tech arm, so I think I'm going to work on that a little bit today, perhaps. I also did a little toolkit for a ranger. This is a little bird ranger, and he's got kind of a few swords and a couple of guns, lots of gear, things like that. This one's a ranger who's kind of comforting a troll. one aspect of the Rangers that I want to start to show a bit more is that they're a bit more in touch with nature than everyone else, which I think is quite typical for Rangers. It's not the most exciting innovation, but of course in the acceleration there's trolls and there's dragons and there's lots of horrible monsters. So Rangers are, able to maybe maneuver amongst them or comfort them and things like that. So I think it could be pretty cool. Dude walking. Again, a ranger with a bit of a pre-tech generator on the side of his head, where he's taken a lot of damage from some kind of fight. So this one, I spent a little bit of time on. This one is, I'll just go into detail with this one. This one is supposed to be showing the Dragon Queen of the Fae, Boudica, in some kind of like midsummer ritual. Oops. Let me just go on this. So there's lots of people in the crowd with feathered headdresses, and she's sitting underneath a massive oak tree on her tomb. And she's like a human dragon, which I haven't shown much in the videos yet, so a bit of a sneak peek. So hopefully she's gonna be more of a either antagonist or protagonist, depending on how things go. And so I've done like a few massive big rune stone, which are going to have some engravings on them. And so I need to work on that a little bit more. And then a party of adventurers. We've got a sheep, a woman with a spear, and a big rook, which is kind of like I don't know how widespread rooks are, probably around Europe at least, maybe in North America, but big, kind of menacing looking birds. So I thought that'd be a cool one for an adventurer. That one's kind of half finished. So, and then I did this one, which is a bit more of a complete piece. So this is a grey squirrel fae ranger, bit of a mouthful, who's just kind of chilling with his gun in the Caledonian Highlands. And so I got a bit more detail on this one. You got like the mountain in the background and everything. So yeah, those are the ones I've kind of worked on since the last stream. So doing a bit more color and doing a bit more about Caledonia as well, which is hopefully going to be quite interesting. If anyone in the chat wants to make some suggestions for today, I'm pretty loosey-goosey for, what to draw. Like I said, I've got a few things kind of prepared, but quite flexible. I want to kind of keep it on topic with the Fae, Rangers, or maybe just Caledonian Rangers. And I might just start with this one, in fact. But if anyone has any good ideas about what they want to see today, just let me know. But I can see there's a few people in already. Got 10 people on YouTube. I'm not sure on Twitch. Let me have a quick look. Like I said, I'm very new to streaming, so it's all a bit. If anything goes wrong, just let me know. I think there's just a couple of people on Twitch. But yeah, if you guys are any of you guys working on any projects, any world building project? I think I remember talking to Throndix a little bit about it in the previous class. I think you said you, in the previous session, I think you did say you did a bit of art, I think. But how about you? CRBNA, is that how you pronounce your name? I'm not quite sure. I don't want to kind of presume. Lazy Crow, I have a question about the dragons of this world. Is there a whale type dragon? Sorry if you've answered this question already, but love the art. Thank you. Yeah, no worries at all. Dragons essentially are kind of spread out across all types of animals. So essentially when an animal these are all kind of like working ideas, but when an animal becomes more intelligent, it has through the mutation that happens because of the acceleration. They have the chance to either become a fae or a dragon or a troll or just nothing happens. They just get bigger and become a giant. So, is there a whale dragon? Yeah, potentially, is my best answer. Because I haven't established one in the lore currently. But in the last week we did chat about that a little bit, and a few people were just saying, it would be a cool idea to do a essentially a whale dragon that had like its worshippers on its back, and it was humongous, like the size of an island, and all of its cultists kind of lived on top of it, and it went across the world and maybe picked up other worshippers or picked up other creatures along the way. So it's definitely in the works. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, a whale dragon would be cool. So it's definitely in the works, but I've got a few other videos that I need to go through. I kind of said on the Patreon newsletter, bit of a plug there. I do have a Patreon. It's completely free, so there's no paid tiers or anything. But the plan is to do a newsletter and kind of add a few little snippets here and there about the upcoming plans, which I'm about to say are not always accurate, because I said essentially that the next video was going to be about the Dragon of Murder, which is essentially a black cat who goes through the Great Forest, just kind of being a cat. But yeah, that's not going to happen, because I'm going to do Fey Rangers instead, like this little dude. But yeah, so the chance of there being a whale dragon is pretty high, because I think a lot of people have asked after it. So I think if it's kind of like it's like a cool, almost like community idea at this point. So it's definitely something I would like to look into. That's a bad circle. What sparked the idea of your world building project? Because I find it so interesting with the animal mutations and stuff. Thanks. Yeah. So a few things actually. I grew up probably like a lot of you guys, if you're into fantasy. I grew up kind of reading Redwall, and I think that was probably one of the big ones, because with it's a bit more medieval themed, but I feel like it's kind of a similar idea, right? And obviously the scale is very different, so that's very small. But the kind of like animals, realistic animals that have weapons and they do battle and they have like roles in society. That was a really big one. There's a lot of other stuff as well. I follow a bunch of world builders, so people like Monster Garden, the Eternal Ruin, Winter is a good one on YouTube. We talked about him a little bit last time, and a few others as well. And they kind of like, they were big inspirations, I would say, and like kind of, and not just for the art, but also for getting me making videos. Because I probably, like you guys, I just procrastinate a lot, and I have 1,000 projects. I literally have right next to me now on my desk, I have sketchbooks and sketchbooks just full of art for different projects that just never came to be, or worlds that I kind of imagined, or stories and things like that. And I feel like this is the first time I've really invested in an idea and tried to develop it. And so yeah, I would say kind of a bunch of different YouTubers and books and video games as well have kind of inspired it. In terms of like the art inspiration, I would say a lot of the old school Warhammer art is a lot of probably my biggest inspiration. Cole Kopinski, Paul Dainton, Adrian Smith, these kind of old school like metal artists, John Blanche, of course, and loads of other things. But yeah, I wouldn't say anything exactly. I think it's a cool thing about a world building project, a genre like the world building genre, where you have loads of people who are kind of doing the same thing, with obviously very separate ideas, very individual ideas, but so unique at the same time. So it kind of works out that you're inspired by people without wanting to copy their ideas. And I think being inspired in a way where it's, it's not even a bad thing to maybe take elements of other people's stuff. Like Monster Garden's idea is really good, where it's like, an eternal war type thing. But again, that you see that a lot in other visual media. And it's like a world that's consumed by war, and the nations present in the world building project are like, they're all warmongers. And I think it's his way of doing it is so unique. But again, it's not like taking anyone's idea. It's not a super new idea, but the way he's done it is very new. And so I feel like I've probably done the same a lot. Using other genres and other ideas to help me kind of develop this one. And if anyone has any recommendations for cool world building channels, I'd love to hear it, because I follow them all. A termite or ant dragon with a huge colony would be a neat addition. Yeah, so we were talking about this a little bit in the last stream, and I have kind of hinted at it a little bit. So I'll show you this. I kind of very briefly showed it in the last stream. I do have a bunch of stuff on here. Let me see if I can find it. Oh yeah, here. So this is very unfinished art, so I apologize if it doesn't look very good, but this is exactly what you were saying about CR Bene. It's essentially a giant ant queen dragon, and essentially the idea was she has a massive colony of ants and a few like ant fae who act as emissaries, but the majority of them are ant giants, ant trolls, and just normal ants, and they live in a mega colony on the island. And yeah, it was going to be a short story about a mercenary who is sent to deal with an ant problem because they've got ant giants nearby, and the troll hunters couldn't deal with them. And then his whole crew is eaten essentially, and he is captured and brought to the ant queen, who wants him to go forth and like spread a message. But I never really got around to it. I find drawing insects really difficult, if I'm honest, with the like how they're kind of transparent and the different parts and of the legs and everything. I'm not very good at it, if I'm honest. What is the glowing stuff on the side? Fire for some reason. I don't know. I thought it made it look a bit more ominous. It's not. Like I said, it was very much a concept sketch. So I'm going to come back to it at some point, but for the time being, that's all it'll really be. Do you have any recommendations on how to crack out videos? Because I also procrastinate. Honestly, what I do, because I'm not going to say I have ADHD, because I've never got myself tested or anything, but I really, really struggle with procrastination, and I always have. And I'm so surprised, as is my family and my wife, about how much I've done in this project and how far I've kind of taken it. Because I've been doing it for almost probably over 6 months now, and so it's going quite well. Anyway, my trick for forcing myself to do stuff is one that I've heard from a lot of people, and it's essentially, if you're the sort of person who would rather play video games, or I don't know, do something else other than doing like a project like this, it's to, when you want to do it, but you want to procrastinate at the same time, and you want to play video games, it's just to say, okay, I'll do 5 minutes, and it'll be like 5 minutes of drawing, or 5 minutes of video editing, or you just try and write 5 minutes of the script for your next YouTube video, and you'll be so surprised with how often you won't stop after 5 minutes. You'll kind of start, and you'll get into some form of acceleration where you get some ideas, or the drawing's going really well, or you find you're being really efficient with the video editing, and you'll see that, okay, I'll do 5 more minutes, and eventually it ends up being like an hour of work, which you would have otherwise not done. And that's worked for me for like the last 6 months. It's gone, again, surprisingly well, and I think it's mainly because of that. I wouldn't call it a technique, but that way of tricking myself into just working, really. I definitely recommend it. Right, I need some references here. But yeah, honestly, I would say if you've got an idea, especially for a world building project, I would say jump into it and kind of force yourself to do it, because it's just a nice way of, you know, doing a project and not having to commit to one idea, because especially if it's a big world, kind of like, you know, the Acceleration, where you have all of these different elements, and even though it's set within a specific time period, you know, it's all quite 17th century stuff. I have the freedom to do short stories and do maybe a little bit of poetry, or do a little bit of illustration, or do a little bit of, I don't know, lots of different things. So I would definitely recommend it, especially for world building. And I feel like, you know, if you can just get started and just start doing it, you'll be surprised in 6 months when you're, you know, it's like a big part of your life, and your friends and family are motivating you and things like that. Honestly, I would say get started for sure. CRB8, I'd like to recommend The Encyclopedia of Animals by David Alderton. It's an awesome book with a lot of inspiration, illustrations. David, I'm going to write this down. David Alderton. Encyclopedia. Yeah, I have this book. Maybe it's this book. I think it's like quite an old one, right? It came out a while ago. Yeah. So my mum is an artist. She's a professional artist, and she pretty much does all nature stuff, but a lot of animals. And so and even my granddad, I think, was very much like into bird watching and stuff like that. So I grew up with a lot of inspiration from, especially for animal art stuff. So a lot of it was like these little books, and some of it's, you know, photography, but some of it's illustrations. In fact, on my shelf right now, I've got a few bird books which I've borrowed from my mum to work on this project. And I think that's one of them. That's at my mum's house. I'll have to check next time I'm around there. At my parents' house. I don't know if any of you are from the UK, or I don't know if it's the same in the US, but I think a lot of kids my age grew up on David Attenborough, and a lot of these, you know, BBC documentaries about animals and Blue Planet and all these kind of things. So it's very much a part of. I'm kind of ignoring the reference here. I shouldn't do that. Oops. It's very much a part of my life, and I would say, yeah, if my mum doesn't have that book, I'll have to check it out, because I'm a bit obsessed with animal books in general. I might keep that. It looks a bit like a shotgun, but it looks kind of cool. Is there any gods in your world, but not like creatures seen as gods, like pure cosmic gods? Good question. Yeah, so no, not really. Essentially, the world is very. There's a lot of superstition in the world, and there's a lot of beliefs, and a lot of people, kind of like you said there, it's like people who believe in the dragons as, you know, gods on earth, walking gods, and, you know, these gods that kind of exist and walk among us. But that's it. And, you know, it's not going to be much of a secret from a meta point of view, from like your perspective outside the world. But the people in the world very much believe, you know, that some of these dragons are deities essentially, and worship them as such. So I think it will that will come across a lot, especially I'm making this into a TTRPG, based on the mothership system, like the Panic Engine system, and that's going to be hopefully a big part of it. Is superstition, and, you know, players will be expected to kind of role play their superstitions or their beliefs, even if it's not true, and it will play into roles, but in the form of kind of like luck, and so it's very much an idea, but in more of like a gameplay mechanic as opposed to like a real world kind of DT thing. I don't really know what to do with this fuse. That'll be fun. I thought when a creature goes through the transformation to trolls, they become more savage than their non-troll counterpart. So wouldn't the troll ant act similar to human trolls in a village? Great question. So in one of the videos, I think it was the dragon video. I can't remember which one. Yeah. It talks about the Great Herd, which is a herd of deer that live in the Caledonian Highlands. And they have essentially found a way to tame trolls. And no one else knows how to do it. So before I did the Great Herd, I was planning on doing the ants. And so the idea was for them, actually. And I thought a big aspect of it was because ants use pheromones. They would use the pheromones to control the trolls. Or the trolls would be kind of blind to them. They wouldn't see the other ants because it's just like part of its environment. Whereas everything else, it would be savage too. And essentially, the ants would use them as kind of battering rams, or they would just send them into a village to kind of cause chaos. They'd be like kind of trapped in the ant colony and then released on an unsuspecting like town. So that was the original idea for like a faction that has control over the trolls. But that kind of morphed into the Great Herd. And the Great Herd has kind of mysterious methods to controlling the trolls, which hasn't really been revealed yet. I will reveal it at some point in the future, but I'm still kind of working on it. And as I was saying earlier, that's very much a part of, I think, world building is how you can kind of freeball it. You don't. It's fun to make it not, too rigid and under all of these rules that you've kind of set for yourself. I don't know if anyone's kind of followed the YouTube channel since right from the start, but in my first original introduction video, I mentioned about magic in the world, and the idea was to have these massive, really, really tall cities that sit above the forest, and the fire wardens actually were one of my original ideas, and they kind of keep animals outside of the forest, but the forests were essentially these big hive cities, like in the Warhammer universe, where millions of people lived. And then that kind of fell to the wayside as I continued to develop the world, which I'm kind of happy about because it was a cool idea, and I made a bunch of 3D renders with the same kind of what I'm going to do? I'm just going to steal this gun. I made a bunch of 3D renders related to. Actually, no, I'll just do the firing mechanism. Related to like that particular idea, but I kind of fell out of love with it, and so it ended up transforming into what is the acceleration today, which I'm happy about. Oh, thanks for dropping in, Thrundix. Yeah, it's a big problem I think with streaming is just it's like it's difficult to. I don't know where everyone's from. So it's difficult to find a good time to fit it in. So sorry, mate. I think I'm going to have to continue doing it at this time. But if you want to stop by next week, I really appreciate it. But thanks for dropping in. Sleep well. CRBNA, what if a superstition was if you had bad manners, you would turn into a troll, or a troll would come and snatch you? Yeah, exactly. Cool. I like that one. So it's essentially that kind of logic where it's like. People honestly, like, truly believe that, if you don't have a shell in your pocket when you go to the beach, then the tide will wash you away, or something like that. So it's like really super strong superstitions, but a lot of them will be related to the world. So things like that, yeah. It's like never trust a. Whatever a bird fae tells you what to do the opposite. Or like you said, if you're ever naughty to your parents, if you ever lie to your parents, the trolls will come and get you. Things like that. So that's going to be a big element, like a role-playing element. And hopefully when players, if I kind of develop it correctly, when players start, they're gonna roll on a D100 table and select a bunch of superstitions. I think this barrel needs to be the same size. Let me take this. and they need to select a bunch of a superstition, and they have to role play with that superstition. So it would mean that, whenever you get a new character, they will have a new superstition, and you'll have to role play them in that particular way. So yeah, hopefully it'll be a cool idea. Wow, this is a ridiculous pistol. I love it. So yeah, there's gonna be loads of stuff like that. But of course, none of it's gonna be true, and hopefully there's gonna be some missions or like quests related to that, where it's like, okay, or with everyone having different superstitions, players will have to kind of play around their teammates' beliefs, and even some of the players might even choose to be like religious characters, where they're part of a dragon cult, or they're part of the Church of the Deep, or one of these other factions. So that's kind of the idea. Anyway, again, it's like very much a work in progress, and actually I'm going to be working on that this weekend. I've got a lot of free time, so that's going to be a big part of the weekend, hopefully getting a lot of that done. Oh yeah, that's a cool pistol. What brush do you use on Procreate? I don't want it to seem like I'm still in style. No worries. It's something I did a lot of research in. So I'll show you actually. Can you see that on the stream? Oh, you can. Cool. I've got loads and loads of brushes. And one of my favorites is this big organic folder, which I think I bought from someone, and I've made a few brushes myself as well. But my main ones are this one here, which is, I'll just show you if I just, oh, is that not working? Oh, I'm on smudge. My main one here is this chisel brush, and it's like a flat brush, and it doesn't rotate. Oh, it does rotate. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, learned something new. So it's just one-sided. So when you drag it, it does that. I love it. And I was using it to draw these things, and a big part of my artistic process, which sounds a bit pretentious, but I think that's the best thing to call it, is drawing something and then chiseling away at it. So you kind of you create a shape. I'll give you an example. If I just draw like a face, like this, and then start to chisel away at it until it looks like something, and then drawing it a little bit more. And I find this chisel brush really helps me to get some like interesting shapes, and especially when you combine it with a brush like this one, which is just a straight up flat brush. I think I made this one myself. I don't want to say that in case I did buy it from someone, but it's a nice simple flat brush, and it kind of does the opposite. So you've got like a nice specific shape that you can control very easily, and you can start to like form something from it. So it's with like a combination of these kind of brushes, you can make something like super quick. It's a very basic face, but it doesn't even really have to be neat. So it works really well with my like preferred style of illustration, which is very messy. And then one thing I do a lot, again with the flat brush, is smudge, because I find smudging really helps you kind of get values in without much effort. So for example, on this face, if I want like a bit more shadow above the eye and here as well, you can kind of just bring it in by dragging. It's almost like a charcoal pencil or something, where you kind of just drag it across. And honestly, it makes it so it's a lot less effort. I mean, I've been drawing like this since I got Procreate, so I found it to be my kind of style of illustration. But it's helped me so much to progress and make things really quickly, which is obviously very satisfying, especially if you've got a short attention span. So in kind of no time at all, you can kind of make something very, very basic. It's not very good. It would take a long time to make something a bit more interesting than that. But just with those kind of those two brushes, and then with a bit of push and shove, you can make something. And then one thing I would say as well about Procreate is to really take advantage of layers. So one thing I almost always do is I like to use this charcoal brush as well, which I think is a basic brush in Procreate. One thing I like to do as well is add a multiply layer, especially if you've got color. It's a nice one. Stick it down to like 60, and then you can use that to make shadows really quickly, like very effective shadows. And then again, you can kind of just erase, or it's like even like smudge things to kind of even out the shadows and make and push them around a bit more. And yeah, you can get something like quite effective very quickly. The hat is awful, but something along those lines. I think the brush pack I bought, it was this one actually, Philip Concept. It's pretty good. Honestly, I think actually his chisel brush was free. He's got like a free pack. But the rest of them I have used in like quite a few images. Especially some of these like rocky textures, which are really nice, and they do quite well as of just being, like for like landscape textures, or one like some of these messy ones, like where is it? Like some of these ones, I think they do very well as like rock textures that you can just have. But yeah. Honestly, man, you don't need a lot of brushes. I basically use 3. The charcoal, the flat brush, and the chisel brush. And other than that, yeah, I don't really find any others necessary, if I'm honest. That's an interesting idea. I never would have thought anything like that. Honestly, I would say, again, big inspiration from things like Mothership in general. It's like it's like a horror game. I don't know if anyone's played it or seen it, but it's like a role-playing game, a tabletop role-playing game, and it's supposed to be like sci-fi horror, like Alien, things like that. So a lot of it's like this panic system where your characters get progressively more and more stressed, and then they have to act on that. So I think the inspiration came from that, and I wanted to develop it a little bit more in the terms of, making it more fantastical, and superstitions kind of seemed like a good fit for that. So that's kind of where that idea came from. Do you have any ideas for lizard type fae? So a lot of the animals in the acceleration, or actually all of them, sorry, are animals from the British Isles, or recently extinct animals from the British Isles. Ooh. Empty layer. No. So we do have, I believe we do have lizards in the UK in like the southwest, but not a lot, like skinks and maybe a few types. Slow worms as well, and a few others. Yes, I think I did draw a lizard fae a while ago, but I've never really got around to working on it much. I love doing the frogs. The frogs of war, the frogs of Icenia, and so they kind of took front and stage, and in terms of like a silhouette, they're quite similar, other than the long tail, and they're a bit easier to draw as well, because I've not really talked about tails much at all, in the acceleration, but I've kind of just removed them from all the animals, hopefully without too many people noticing, and obviously a big part of the lizard silhouette is its massive tail, or its big tail. So if I kind of just remove the tail, it just looks a bit like a frog. So if I'm honest, maybe that's a bit like lazy world building, but yeah, I would say that's probably the main reason why they're not so apparent. This sword is bent. Fix that. Is that bent? Not sure. Are there other hushed and hidden cults that, like, if they walk in a very public area, people would hold their valuables closer besides the bird fae? Yeah, so again, kind of as more of like a game mechanic, a big aspect of it is going to be cults. And I'm going to do a few missions revolving around cults. And I want there to be a lot of flexibilities. So flexibility in terms of what the dungeon master or the warden can kind of create for his people, for his players. And one of them is going to be, again, like a big D100 table, which is a very apparent thing in Mothership, where you have all these like random D100 tables, and one of them is going to be cults. So it's like the Dungeon Master can kind of roll a cult and see what comes up. So there are going to be some other ones, and again, they're going to be at the discretion of the GM. But then there's going to be some really established ones, like the Cult of the Deep, the Church of the Deep, or the Seagulls of Scarborough, or like a corvid cult. So crows and rooks and magpies and things like that. So a few other ones. I've already bent this sword. I think it's just the way I've erased it. Whoopsie. So yes, there will be. And I haven't really made a Thieves Guild. A lot of the Fire Wardens, if you've seen that video, are essentially, like criminals, like ex-criminals. So there are going to be some like crime syndicate type Thieves Guild from like Skyrim type thing, from Oblivion and Skyrim. But yeah, that's kind of just again like a working idea. Hello, I'm new here and have no idea what this channel is about, but love what I see. Thanks, Grimhelheim. So essentially, this is a world building channel. I'm making a project essentially called The Acceleration, and it's a post-apocalyptic fantasy sci-fi type thing. So essentially, the world ended. There was an apocalypse, and then hundreds or thousands of years later, no one really knows, society's kind of rebuilt itself, and you have humans living alongside these animals called Fae, and Fae are just intelligent animals, which I'm trying to illustrate as like these kind of things. So like a rabbit with a gun. All of the technology is very 17th century, but there's also a sci-fi element with drones from the apocalyptic war, and so people are in essentially a musket era, but with a sci-fi element. So that's a very quick analysis of it. It's not super complicated at the moment because I haven't developed it too much, but for the time being, that's everything. So I would say if you're interested, I have made lots of lore videos about this world on the YouTube channel. So if you want to have a look there, after the stream if you like, or whenever, you'll see a lot of information about what this world is about. Essentially, they're very quick videos. Hopefully, I would say. And I want them to be quite efficient videos, so that they're all about less than 6 minutes long. But if you're interested, it could be a cool thing to check out. But welcome, thanks for joining us. Travis, thanks for joining us, mate. There are like 3 lizards in the British Isles: the slow worm, the viperous lizard, and the sand lizard. I didn't know that. I never heard of the sand lizard. I know the slow worms. I haven't heard of the viviparous lizard. That's cool. Thanks for the information. Yeah. So I think they'll probably come into play at some point because lizards are cool. Everyone loves a good lizard. So I think I will introduce them. But again, it's just kind of introducing them appropriately because silhouettes play a large part in any illustration, and I want them to be separate from. I don't want them just to be an extension of the frogs of war. So, that's kind of the idea with that. I missed the last stream due to work. How's the drawing going? Thanks for joining us, Bantom. Yeah, it's going well. Yeah, in the last stream we managed to do a few Fae rangers. So actually managed to be quite efficient. So far today, it's just been this image, which is essentially going to be a equipment pack for a ranger. As you can see, they've got their big gun, their little gun, a little shield, a kind of, I can't remember what they're called, like a Highland sword from that kind of time period, a little dagger, some warm socks, very important when you live in Caledonia, walking stick, the kind of holster for the gun and the sword, the sheath, bullets, and a few techie bits as well. Like he's got a drone and he's got a little hand scanner. Um, because the rangers are going to be obviously more nature based. I'm not gonna go the full way of typical ranger where they live in the woods and they've got a big beard and stuff. But it's going to be a mix of more like modern rangers where they're kind of scientists who live on the land. So these guys go out and they use technology to their advantage to hunt trolls or like to track them to see where they're going to dissuade them. So they're not going to be the same as troll hunters. They're going to be more in touch with nature, hopefully, which is why they've got a bunch of techie stuff. I wonder how orcas would do in the acceleration. Yeah, I think we did have I think we talked about that a little bit in the last stream. We were saying about how I think it came up with like dolphins and other types of aquatic mammals, and how it'd be quite difficult to draw them. And we said about orcas would be a cool one because like maybe like an orca dragon, and she controls a massive pod of hundreds of orcas, and they just sweep through the east coast of the British Isles and just cause havoc with fishing ships, and how obviously they would be super dangerous. Yeah, I think I think what we talked about last time as well was the fact that they're quite difficult to draw, especially from the perspective of a world where everything's now got 2 legs, opposable thumbs, they can talk and interact with humans. I think it might be a tricky one to do. But yeah, I think whale will probably be the first one that we look into. Those are the native ones. There are 3 introduced ones. Yeah, I think it's difficult with introduced animals or like invasive animals. From what I understand, things like pheasants, the common like European rabbit, I think the pigeon, not like a wood pigeon, but like a bred pigeon, are all introduced or selectively bred, so they're not like exactly natural. So I'm just going to kind of go with it. I'm not going to worry too much about it as long as it's something that perhaps a lot of British people would be aware of. Like rabbits and hares are very like if you live in the UK countryside, you see them a lot. And things like migratory birds, sure, why not? Canada goose, some of the ones like that. I think that's absolutely fine. But then if it's something that's not so obvious, for example, in Scotland recently, in real Scotland, not Caledonia, they've reintroduced beavers, which I think are thriving quite well. So I'm not really going to do beavers, I don't think, because I feel, when people think of beavers, they think of North America. At least that's what I think of. So I want to really keep it with like British animals. So foxes, badgers, deer, pigeons, things like that. Yeah. Carbonate. Salamanders would be a good type of fate. I agree, definitely. We do have salamanders in the UK, or at least newts. And again, at one point I considered making newts kind of dogs for the frogs of war, for the frog fae, because I thought that would just be like a cool image to draw. I might still do that, I'm not sure, because salamanders are cute. There are orcas somewhere that love to sink ships and pop the rudders of boat off the coast of Spain. Yeah, I've heard that. I think it was in Canada as well, where you have lots of indigenous people who hunt orcas. I think some of them around there are more aggressive as well. So I think in a world like the acceleration, I might make them aggressive animals just to make them stand out a little bit. But I don't really know what I'm doing here. I guess this is kind of the holster. That'll do. So yeah, there's still a lot of ideas out in the open, and I have so many built up that I would love to get into, but it's kind of tricky being able to do everything. I'm a parent. I've got a job as well. Like I think like a lot of you guys, and I think that's a big aspect of it when it comes to procrastination and trying to get everything done. Is just you kind of got to commit to one idea. I was saying earlier about how my original idea was to do the Dragon of Murder video next, And yeah, just never ended up doing it. So I ended up committing to this ranger bit, which I'm quite happy about because the images that have come out are pretty cool. Do the dragon have any sort of breath weapon? Like, I had an idea, maybe the seagull dragon eats fish and then regurgitates it, spits it out, the long thing, and it hardens fast. Hold it back more. And then after an attack, it has a rotten smell and can trap people in the hard fish throw up. I love that. I would say no for now. There's no breath weapons. I don't want to just be like, okay, everything that is a dragon in modern media, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to say it like that. I want it to be more just the dragon's main strength is the main strengths are their charisma and their intelligence. And so it's with a lot of dragon, it's like espionage and intrigue and murder and, at nighttime and using their cultists to overthrow their enemies and using pre-tech as well. It's something that's going to come up hopefully in some future videos about how dragons can seek pre-tech out because it's obviously so powerful and for them they have the means to and the people to find this pre-tech. So it's gonna be more things like that, and I want the dragons to vary quite a lot in terms of how they function and how their worshippers kind of worship them and things like that. So it's gonna be more ideas related to their intelligence as opposed to perhaps mystical weapons. But some of the pre-tech items are super powerful. So it's things like beams that can melt stone or rays that can kind of pick up really 1,000-ton rocks and things like that. So some of the dragons will possess these really powerful weapons. And so I think that'll play into it. If players ever get to the point where they're powerful enough to fight a dragon, they might have to contend with potential pre-tech, essentially. Carbonate. Great hornbills are incredibly weird-looking birds. Sadly, they don't live in the UK. Yeah, I just watched a short the other day on hornbills. Hornbills are awesome. Spoonbills, anything with a weird bill. But hornbills are dinosaurs. They're straight up dinosaurs. Even the way they sound and their big eyes, they're so cool. We have some cool birds in the UK. A lot of them just are kind of goofy looking. One of the ones I just started drawing before was this rook, and rooks are awesome. It's got I got a sheep reference there. My animal reference picture. So rooks are like, if no one's seen these birds, and they just look awesome. Like a dragon rook, I think would just be a really cool, intimidating bird. I've done a lot of the jackdaws because I love jackdaws and they're very silly, and I have them in my garden and they eat all of my bird food. Carrion crows, jays, just corvids in general are awesome. But rooks in particular have such a unique, almost evil face. I love them. They're so cool. So they're probably going to come up as dragons at some point, just because I feel like they have the right look for it. Just like the owl image that's kind of on screen, or it just was a second ago. Barn owls are just really intimidating animals. They kind of look like aliens, and so I feel like they would be a good one just to introduce. But like a rook. This type of corvid would be a good one to introduce as a dragon, just because of the way they look. Bantom, is there fae for every animal, or are there any animals except from being fae and dragons? Fae, the idea with fae, one of the philosophers of the world theorized that animals that are intelligent were the ones that evolved, that mostly evolved into fae. So that's like mammals, birds, a few types of insects, which wasn't really mentioned in the video, but I kind of retconned it a little bit, like bees, frogs and amphibians, which I don't think I would consider to be the most intelligent animals, but they just look kind of funny, so I just added them as well. And then dragons, there are a lot less dragons than everything else, but they're kind of the final evolution. They're super, super intelligent. They're really big. You know, you'll see some of them in the slideshow that's kind of going across. But a lot of like dragons are essentially just super evolved animals. I'll show you a quick picture here. Like this owl one is one of the dragons. That's the majority of these kind of animals, of Fae and dragons. Dragons really do vary. The other types of mutations are giants, and giants are more just a normal animal that's much bigger. So they did evolve, but they evolved in the sense of becoming much larger, which, you know, from the perspective of like a rabbit or I don't know, like a fish, I guess wouldn't be that scary unless you were in the river. But from the perspective, if you consider something like a hawk, like a giant hawk, or a giant cat, for example, that would be super scary. So these animals are much bigger. They're not more intelligent. They're just normal animals. But depending on what type of the animal it is, they could also be potentially very dangerous. The last type of animal is a troll. And the idea with trolls is they're essentially animals that mutated and just then mutated out of control completely. And so their minds couldn't really take it, and they've just become these raging beasts. And they continue to grow, but their body grows at different rates. So perhaps they grow extra limbs, or they grow claws, or they grow, you know, spines on their head, or extra eyes and extra teeth in their mouth or outside of their mouth. And they become these really horrible mutated monsters. So those are the main 4 mutations, yeah. Fae, giants, trolls, and dragons. One thing to consider as well is humans can become all of the... Well, not Fae, but they can become everything else. Humans can become giants, trolls, and dragons as well. I kind of showed it a little bit at the start of the video, but this is one of the images I was working on this week. And this is one of the human dragons, Boudica from Caledonia. I haven't shown this in any of the videos yet, but this is her like kind of worshippers below a great oak with a bunch of rune stones about. I need to work on this image a bit more, but she's one of the big kind of faction leaders in the acceleration, and she controls essentially a whole nation of fanatical Fae and humans who worship her as almost like a god. Can bird Fae still fly? So I'm going to say not exactly. So again, like I think a lot of my decisions are made in regards to the potential TTRPG. So I want there to be mechanics related to particular Fae. I'm still working that out. I've made a bunch of like concepts on how I want that to work, but nothing has really been put in concrete. So with bird Fae, I was thinking, because they don't really have wings anymore, they've kind of lost their wings for thumbs. But I would say potentially they might have a mechanic where they could glide, where they, you know, they still have some wing remnants, or like it still exists a little bit. They have lots of feathers on their arms or something. So maybe gliding could be a thing. But from a world building perspective, no, not really. With pre-tech, potentially, anyone could fly. There are some pre-tech items like flying boots and things like that. But a big thing with pre-tech is it's super dangerous. So, and no one really knows how it works, apart from like a very few people on the island. So, yeah, I would say not really anyone. Nobody really knows how to fly, except like bird dragons, perhaps. Yeah. Lazy Crow, hey, I have a question. How are the seasons affected by the acceleration? Cool question. So, one thing I really wanted to do was to make the seasons a bit more extreme. So winters are actually not totally, because I want winters to not be too extreme. So you do get a bit of snow, because a big aspect of it is the prosperity that is present in the acceleration. So because animals evolved and they grow so fast, there's an abundance of food. So you have things like giant cows. So I wanted there to be some element of these cities which have managed to kind of recover from this apocalyptic situation. And therefore, I wanted the summers to be kind of beautiful, typical British summers, essentially like, Hobbiton from the Lord of the Rings, where you have, this really utopian summer. And it just means that crops are super successful and colonies are able to survive quite easily, and new cities are able to pop up. And then the biggest challenge for them is not the seasons, but more nature, the animals around them and the forests and everything. And therefore the winters will be much milder, and then the springs, summers, and autumns would be quite warm, but in a good way. Kind of like now, I guess. 25 degrees, good temperature for the UK. That's an idea. Again, it's one of the things I'm working on. It's a good question because it's something I have considered quite a lot, but it's something I really need to go back to and think about. I'm just drawing this bird's face, but I'm not quite sure what bird I want to do. Let's have a look. Maybe a black bird. Do dragons have more than 2 legs, or any physical differences? Or Dimorpoles. One of the original ideas I had for dragons was for them to be I'm gonna do Robin. For them to be like griffins, so to have 4 legs. And actually, in one of the... I'll quickly show you this image that I did ages ago. It's one of my favorite images I've done. For the... Maybe this one? Yeah, this one here. So actually, you'll notice that these are kind of drawn quite sloppily, but like griffins a bit. And that's because that's how I wanted them to be. Like giant animals that are kind of evolved like that. I'm going to retcon that, if I'm honest. I want them, because like I was saying earlier, a big pack of birds, a big like flock of birds that are, 6 foot, would be terrifying. That would be so scary. You're going for the forest. And of course, all of these kind of animals are omnivores, so they'd happily eat us. So I feel like there's no need to give them more limbs, and because they're just kind of scary enough. So yeah, it was something I really considered, like to give them more limbs or to give them hands or something like that, like the Fae. But essentially, no. I want giants to just be massive animals. Maybe. I mean, I think with the owl picture, I gave him an arm. Let me have a look. Yeah, okay. So he kind of has an arm there. So it was something I've thought about, giving them limbs, but I might just play that off as a twig or something. But yeah, similar to giants, I feel like a giant owl would be terrifying, would be super, super scary. And it would kind of justify why they need these cults to look after them, because, giant bird claws are kind of useless in most situations, especially if you're hunting in an island that is just mostly big forests. I think it would be quite difficult. So they use their charisma to kind of encourage animals to worship them, and therefore to get to do stuff for them, because actually they can't. But yeah, again, all work in progress ideas that could potentially happen. Great questions. I think this was the same as last stream, where I kind of walked away with like a bunch of ideas afterwards, because you guys were coming up with loads of ideas and asking some really intriguing questions. A lot of them which I either haven't considered or I've kind of put on the wayside, and so I want to come back to them and give them some more focus and to think about them a bit more. But essentially, I want to kind of come up with a bunch of these different questions to ask myself before making anything really concrete. I think that's a fun thing about world building is you don't need to have like a set idea in place, but it does kind of help a little bit. Hello, this is the Best King from Twitch. Hey, I want to ask how much of the island is part forest. Hey, mate. So one thing I've said, I think in one of the videos, was a lot of people theorize that the Green Sea, which is a bit of a nickname for the Great Forest, it stretches from the south coast to the tip of the north coast. So it's like essentially an endless green sea, which is the perspective a lot of people have, because people don't really leave their villages; they stick around and live there their whole lives because it's so dangerous in the woods. Um, so yeah, a lot of people consider that. In reality, the Great Forest is huge, so it does stretch across most of the Albion Isles, but not the whole way. Um, and you come across environments in the British Isles which are very similar, in the Albion Isles, which are very similar to the British Isles. For example, Caledonia, which is based off of Scotland, has a very like highland region where you have a lot of bracken and heathland and things like that. So like this area, it's not forest, and there's no forest in the distance, and so that's kind of the perspective. Also, a lot of people who are not from Caledonia don't really know about the Caledonian landscape because it's almost like a rival nation. I think this bird needs to be a bit squattier. So it's a bit of a mystery to a lot of people, and I kind of want the lore videos to come across as in that sense where it's like, oh yeah, that's better, chunky boy. Where it's almost like the lore is coming from in world. So people have certain perspectives on the world, and therefore those lore videos will come out in that sense. And I think that kind of helps me to justify if I ever change anything or retcon anything, because I can just say, oh no, that's the perspective some peasant had in a little village. So yeah, I think that's the main idea. But yeah, so the forest is huge, really really big. Bigger than probably like Bronze Age England, Bronze Age Britain, but really stretching a large portion of the island. Sleepy Citizen, do you write down your ideas? So I have a Excel spreadsheet or a Google Sheets document, and the ideas I have written down are things like named characters, like the Bracken Bard, or some of the other ones I've just briefly mentioned in videos, like the giant Dane kings of Jorvik, which will come up in a future video. The names of dragons, the names of factions, things like that. So I'm kind of keeping track of stuff. I also write down ideas that I've thought up and I think have some merit, or like that I could potentially come back to. So even if I've kind of said no to it now, I write it down just in case. But it's kind of nice as well because you'll go back into that document and you'll be like, oh yeah, I completely forgot about that. Oh, that's super relevant to the video I'm just about to make. And it kind of encourages you to fit some cool stuff in. Like the Fire Wardens I was saying earlier was one of my early ideas. And so I wanted to do them in a much earlier video, and then I ended up coming back to them and producing a whole video about them because I really liked them. But they were kind of put in the back burner for another day, and I came back to it. So I would say probably the same for other world builders on here, but I feel like that's a good piece of advice in general. Is just try to keep your ideas, even if you think they have no merit now, because it's good to kind of be inspired by your past self, I guess. Hey, what about wild boars? I've got an idea for them. I've done a few images on wild boars. I love boars. They don't exist in the UK anymore. Oh no, that's not true. They exist in Scotland. I love boars. So I really want to do some more stuff with them. I do have a picture of boars in here. Here. This is one of the original. This is the image I think that made me want to do a TTRPG, because I thought this would be like a cool little squad. And one of the original guys was a boar. So he was supposed to be a bit like he's got like a typical Irish kilt. And this little mouse dude who I absolutely love. He's such a cool little dude with his gun. And then this dude here as well. So this was an original idea for the boars. I've done a few more since then. In fact, one I did the other day, which I started, was a boar troll. So this kind of shows, with all the spikes growing out of it, the multiple eyes on one side of its face. This is so boars are definitely going to come into it because I love boars in general. So there's a few other animals which I really like and I want to introduce more. There's been loads about badgers and foxes and things like that because I love those kind of animals. And I have a lot of bias towards animals, so you'll see them more often than not. Seagulls as well are one that are going to come up a lot more. That's why I made them into a whole faction. My family is from a seaside town in the UK, and so I've known seagulls my whole life, and I find them very funny. And they have, again, speaking about when I was speaking about the rooks earlier, in terms of like a silhouette and a kind of evilish face. I think seagulls have that perfect face for that. So, but yeah, boars are cool dudes, and they'll definitely come up again. Blue chickadees slurp milk dew off the bottles. Would that be a good addition? Have a nice day, Bracken Bard. Yeah. Oh, are you off, Siabine? I didn't know if you are you leaving. Well, thanks for stopping by. If you are going, I appreciate all the questions as well. It's nice to have lots of inspiration. Blue chickadees. I've heard that name before. A chickadee. Ah, yeah. Is that what you call blue chickadees? I thought in English we call them in the UK I think we call them a blue tit, but is Eurasian African members of the family are referred to as tits, while North American species are either called chickadees. I didn't know that. So chickadees is a type of tit. In the UK, obviously it's a funny name, but we call them blue tits, great tits, lots of names like that. So yeah, I think I did do a picture of a chickadee at some point because they're very cute. But they'll definitely come back into it. I didn't know that. They slurp milk dew off the bottles. I also want to do a few more like ideas with natural parts of Fae, like the instinctual stuff. So, for example, like Fae animals which are natural burrowers would live underground. They prefer to live underground, or natural Fae which are naturally vegetarian would also just eat a lot of vegetables as opposed to eating meat. So I want there to be some remnants of their kind of previous life or previous existence. They're kind of ancestors. But again, it's kind of a work in progress. How old is the world? Like, did the old world get really advanced over the course of hundreds of years and then died off, and the new world grew to the world's current age? Yeah, so you pretty much nailed it there. The previous civilization, which is called the Byzantine Empire, it was essentially a globally spanning empire. And they had a war, a civil war or a war with another faction. It's kind of unknown. But essentially they destroyed the world, which somehow is related to the acceleration, the thing that forced everything into this kind of stage of mutation. And so there's remnants of the worlds that still exist from the old world that was. And so that's where this kind of pre-tech comes from, like this drone here. I'll show you some other images of the drones because I like them. But essentially they still exist, but just in terms of their tech that they've left behind, like this walker drone. The Byzantine Empire, originally, I wanted them to be a lot of like Roman statue machines, which is why you have this kind of sculpted head with the plasma gun in its mouth. And the blue glow was a big part of it, which I always think is pretty cool. I love a good glow. So this is kind of what's left of the old world. In terms of the age, the current age, nobody knows. And so it's like a lot of people think this apocalypse happened within the last 100 years or a few hundred years, whereas others believe it's from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. It's so again, it's kind of hinted at this, and it's all from the in-world perspective. But yeah, it's a very old world, and these people, the Fae and humans who live in the current age, live on top of what was essentially. So yeah, it's what I want to do is at one point I wanted to do a fantasy world, a bit like Warhammer, where they have a Warhammer Fantasy and Warhammer 40k, and I wanted to do a fantasy world and then a sci-fi world. And I kind of just pushed them together, which I'm quite happy about that decision, because it does add like a sci-fi element to this fantasy world, which I think is, I don't know, from my perspective, it's kind of cool, and it's fun to draw as well, like floating drones or like, you know, giant mech arms on someone with like a musket pistol. You know, how can you go wrong with that? That's always cool. Sleepy Citizen, have you drawn any mink or ferret like Faye? Would love to see that. I have indeed. Sorry, I know I'm flicking in and out of these drawings, but I like it when people ask me questions and I have references to them. So, in my Fire Warden video, did this one? No. Oops, that's a silly frog. This one. I did one bounty hunter ferret. I haven't drawn any minks, because we were speaking about this earlier, but you know, in terms of invasive animals, I think minks were brought into the UK to harvest their fur. But ferrets and pine martens, I think, are native to the UK. So this is a cute little dude. I've seen a bunch of these around where I live. Very luckily, they've just like dived across the road. I can't remember. There's another type of animal in the UK. Animal like ferret in the UK. Polecats. Yeah. So polecats, ferrets, and pine martens, I think, are native to the UK. So I again, I love them. The difficulty with them is the length of the neck. So it's kind of like this dude, I've kind of hidden it with a collar. But it's the same with any. It'd be like, you know, drawing a giraffe fae. I don't know how I would do it. It's one of the reasons I've avoided horse fae or dolphin fae, because I think they'd be quite difficult to draw. I'm going to try and conceptualize them. I did fish a while ago, and I love how they kind of came out, the concepts. But I really want to experiment. Obviously, there's so many really cool species of animal in the UK, so I want to kind of push the boundaries a bit. I've been a bit lazy, and I've just done birds and a few typical mammals, but I will come back to them at some point. Is there any mountains south of the Caledonian Highlands, like a place for mining iron and coal that would be accessible to civilizations, like Wales or the Midlands? Great question. Yes. It's something I was actually thinking about today. In typical, you know, procrastinating fashion, I was thinking about all the supplements I want to make for the TTRPG. Not even, you know, the actual TTRPG itself, but one of the ones I wanted to do was a mining town, and essentially a cult that lives in the mine, and you know, some mishaps that go on, very, you know, Cthulhu-esque, disappearance of the like mine overseer, and it's considered to be like a unionization problem, but actually it turns out to be a cult that is digging down to find some sort of dragon that supposedly lives below the ground. So yes, there's very prominent mines, and a big aspect of mining as well is treasure hunting. So they mine ruins. So I guess kind of archaeology. But yeah, I think, like you said, Wales, the Midlands, even like, you know, Caledonia, some other, you know, places that might have actual mountain ranges in the UK, I think would be good places to do it for sure. I'm guessing all tomorrows 5. I've not heard that before. All tomorrows. What's all tomorrows? Oh, cool. There's like loads of aliens. What can you explain all tomorrows to me, Man in the Red Cape? I'm looking for some new sci-fi stuff. I just finished Red Rising recently. I just read the most recent Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I'm looking for new suggestions. I'm listening to a lot of D&D podcasts at the moment, but I need a good audiobook again. I don't really like giving Amazon money. I'm on Twitch, so I guess I'm kind of being a bit hypocritical, but yeah, I use Audible a lot, and so any new audiobook suggestions are always good. I try to write every one down that comes. I wrote all the ones down from the last stream, and I'm definitely going to check them out as soon as I get some time. I think you should lean into the lankiness of the ferrets. I agree. I feel like there's something there, right? That just adds to it. It's kind of like the chonkiness of this Robin Fay. I think it'll just aid. He needs a bigger eye. I think it'll look better in the long run. Is that too big? That's too big. If I lean into the lankiness, I agree. I definitely have to do that at some point. Again, that ferret picture was like really quick. It was like a very quick concept, but there you go. Cool dude. So there's so many cool animals out there, but to like be able to draw them in a way that looks good in this kind of style, I think is, I don't know if I always succeed. I feel like some of them just don't work. This guy, I like this guy. I'm quite happy with how this guy's coming out. With the drones, something I'm trying to do is make this messy engine style image. Like if anyone's seen any schematics for like plane engines or cars, because I'm not very good at it, if I'm honest, like technical drawing, and it's something I would love to get a lot better at. I'm not a big Gundam guy, but some of the Gundam like user manual schematics illustrations are awesome. They're so cool. And obviously they've put a lot of work into them, and it's something I would love to be able to do better. In my Patreon newsletter, which is free, if anyone's interested, is a recommendation for a book called Sketch, which is by an artist called Terada Katsuya, and it's like he does a style similar to like Kim Jong-yi, where it's like a lot of pen illustrations, but it's almost like deconstructed engines attached to people, typically women, pretty women that he's drawn, but it's awesome. It's so cool, and it's like it really inspired me in the way that I want to do pre-tech. I feel like I don't always succeed with it, and it doesn't always look like very good, but I guess it's just experimenting and trying to find something that works out of the chaos. It's like a cosmic horror thing. Let me see if I can copy and paste into the aliens. But anyway, the aliens are godlike species, and when you said no one knows what happened. Nice, yeah, definitely. I'll make a note of it and check it out. All tomorrows. Yeah. I feel like one of the best ways to get inspired for a project like this is just to consume as much as possible, but in like a healthy way, like as many books as possible, and as many video games that like have good storylines, and yeah, novels and everything like that. I think it's just a good way to do it. Speaking about making suggestions, I have a Discord. I think a few people in the chat are already in the Discord. It's very small at the moment. I'm not going to spend the whole stream plugging. I'm sure you guys don't want to hear too much of that, but I'm trying to build it up a little bit more, and it's cool. We've got a few people in the chat who are in the Discord who have put out their world building projects, and they're starting to like kind of build them up on there, and I'm trying to have a look through all of them and see how everyone's doing, or how everyone kind of does their own projects, because it's good to get inspired that way. So if anyone's interested, I would say it's a good place to kind of hang out. I'll put a quick link in the chat in case anyone's interested. How do I do that? But yeah, it's a pretty small server at the moment, but I think hopefully it'll be more interesting in the future. Let me send a server invite. How do I send an invite? 1 second. Let me just add a link. Okay. So yeah, if anyone is interested in joining the Discord, it's there for you. It's available, and especially I would say everyone's welcome. But if you've got a world building project or that you're kind of developing, I'd love to see it. Honestly, it's something that I think the Monster Garden, and another good Discord to follow, the Monster Garden Discord does really, really well. They on there they've got loads of world builders, and a lot of them are like big YouTubers in the world building community, which is still quite small, but quite significant ones. And they just put out their concepts before they do a video, which is awesome. And so I'd like to kind of create something similar if possible. But it'll get there eventually. Yeah, if anyone wants to check that out. Has anyone got any other suggestions for like types of Fae that you'd like to see? I think, like I said, I'm a bit more biased towards particular animals, and I feel like I need to be a bit more open-minded and try to consider other options if possible. Because I feel like, especially when you haven't considered something else, it's difficult to just imagine it. I guess it's part of the world building process. Like the crab dragon was very like random. I mentioned it a little bit in the previous stream, but it kind of came from the idea of not going too Cthulhu-esque. So I wanted to do a crab instead of an octopus. Sleepy Citizen, what other world building projects inspire you? So Monster Garden for sure. I think if anyone likes world building, you'll probably know them. It's a dude who's making a world called Rust and Trenches. He just produced a new video actually recently. It's really inspired, very like high quality video production, and yeah, he obviously knows his stuff very well, like in terms of art. I don't know if he was like a concept artist beforehand, but just a really solid project to follow. Winter's a great one. He does. In fact, he's just changed his project recently, but I think his artwork is just very nice. Again, another guy who just seems like a concept artist naturally. The Eternal Ruin is one of my favorite, and if you like Zelda, if you like Legend of Zelda, it's like that kind of art style. But he does a lot of his background images as 3D. Like he develops them in I think Blender, and then draws over the top of them, and so it's just like he's got like a very particular like style that's really recognizable. It's just beautiful. It's like really nice art, and it's cool because it's kind of a bit creepy, but at the same time very warm, and I don't know. I think he's got like a real style that works. So I'd say those three are probably big ones. Sleepy Citizen, love Monster Garden. Yeah, he's great. And I think in terms of people who've brought out, who've really showcased this particular genre, I think he's probably the biggest person in that regard. I feel like he has, kind of put it on the map a bit. And I'm sure there were other people before him, but whenever I see people talking about world building, he's like the first person they mention. So definitely an influential figure in the community. Turtles, yeah. In the UK, we have tortoises. I think all the turtles in the UK are invasive. We have like terrapins, which people just kind of, they get bored of their pet turtle and just drop them into a local lake or something like that. So, yeah, I think I think they could be quite cool. And that was one thing I was thinking about actually the other day. Do you know, like I saw a shield bug on the wall. So basically a bug that looks like a shield in the UK, and they're also called stink bugs. And I was trying to think how a Fae would look like with that, like because there's no way to draw it without the shell, and I think it would be the same kind of issue with a tortoise. So it's definitely something I want to look into because I feel like it could be like a really cool type of Fae. But yeah, I'll have to come back to that one. I think similar to dolphins, it's a bit of a tricky concept that I need to consider. In fact, I'm going to do this backwards. Actually, no, I like that. That's fine. I have a question. Is there a trading ship that travels long distances in the world, like ships going from the British Isles to Spain? Good question. Yes. So ships trade between continents. They trade in goods, but because of like you talked about earlier with the climate and how the British Isles is a lot warmer than it was, they actually are able to grow a lot of spices and plants for particular dyes, and are able to harvest particular minerals that weren't there before. And so they do trade with other things, but again, it's equal amount of exporting as it is importing. So in a couple of the videos, like for example, one of the videos called The Witness, which is about a guy who arrives in the port of Scarborough. So he is not from the British Isles. He is from a foreign country, which is not kind of stipulated in the video where he's from exactly, but he comes from a college, which is essentially somewhere in Europe. And again, he's going to kind of stay as a mysterious character, but he's an example of people who come to the British Isles as well. So it's not just items, it's also people. Because again, it's a very prosperous place now, and therefore people come here for work as well as trade. There's also talk of a cuttlefish dragon who harasses ships off the east coast, and so he's known for like sinking ships, so it's kind of hinted at quite a bit, but not I haven't really developed on it too much because again, I really want to focus mostly on the British Isles and not imply too much about the outside world, because from the perspective of 99% of people in this universe, the outside world essentially just, it's not that they don't think it exists, it's just that it's just not relevant to them at all. So yeah, sounds a bit lazy, but it's definitely something I want to consider a bit more in the future. But yeah, I'll have to see how that works at some point. We'll have to see some Scottish wildcat fae, something like a centipede with many flintlock pistols. So let's have a look. I did a really early sketch when I was kind of developing the fae many months ago, and one of the ones I did was a wildcat fae because they got a really particular face. Where is it? This one. This little guy here. This is when I was kind of developing the fae and thinking of some ideas. And there's a boar as well. The badger, fox, and hare. Like I said, I just love those particular animals. So yes, I would say there's definitely going to be some more cats. I think there was another cat images. This was the original image. It's not very good, but that was the idea was a wild cat. In fact, you can see it there in the reference image. A particular Scottish wildcat. So I'm going to do more of them because again, I want them to be really part of the Fae of Caledonia. But yeah, so the idea is to bring them in at some point. I just need to get locked in and start drawing a bit more. So what was I say? Yeah. Does the sorry, the centipede, that was what I was thinking of as well. I did a centipede image a while ago. I'm not super happy with it. It was about, Was it trolls? No, it was about giants. And the video was essentially the picture is essentially just a frog fighting a big troll. Okay, it's here. Sorry, a big centipede. Again, I'm not super happy with the image, but this is a centipede giant. I'm going to come back to insects at some point when I'm feeling a bit more confident about drawing them. I'm going to do a faction in the TTRPG called Weird Folk, and it might even be like a separate supplement because I want them to be really detailed, but they're essentially going to be the weird creatures in the world, because the humans and the Fae know a lot about birds and the mammal Fae and things like that, but then insects and fish and jellyfish and starfish and crab Fae would be obviously super weird concepts. So it's definitely something I want to get into a bit more. But yeah, so they're going to be a faction called Weird Folk, which I'll come back to at some point, including insects. What would be the rarest Fae? Probably things like jellyfish, starfish, crabs, lobsters, shrimp, types of insect as well. Just unusual animals. I think a big part of it is not just that they're unlikely to evolve. It's also the fact that they are they look weird, and I think people would be scared of them, and therefore witch hunts are not an unlikely thing in a world so superstitious as the Acceleration. So okay, a crop fails, or it has like an insect eating all of the potatoes, a potato famine, and they would go out and they would find the insect Fae and attack them and blame them for the problems with the crops. And so I think it would just be a reality of living in that kind of timeline. And so therefore, yeah, weird folk in general are just chastised and kind of removed from society because of that. So yeah, they're a lot less. Basically, the uglier a creature are, like the more unusual a creature is, the more likely it is to not exist successfully in the Acceleration. Does the pre-tech have any effect on the person using, for example, in my world there are these people called courted mages, and lost the ability to use mages and turn to a machine-like way to put magic. Cool, that sounds awesome. So is your world like I guess it's like a fantasy world, right? That sounds cool. So yeah, to answer your question, yes. Pre-tech is difficult to use, and no one really knows what it's for. It would be the kind of analogy I have is, imagine you found like an alien remote control with loads of buttons on it. If you press the buttons, nothing kind of happened. There's no way to kind of analyze or tell what it does. So that's kind of the perspective of pre-tech. A lot of people find this pre-tech in the forest or in the ocean or buried underground, for example, and they don't really know what it does. So the idea is a lot of people install it into their bodies. Whether they've lost a limb and they need to replace the limb, for example, or whether they just want to enhance their body. But the pre-tech requires a current, and so the current that it uses naturally is the body's natural kind of current, which is obviously very low, but it's enough to run the pre-tech because it's such an efficient technology. However, again, an element of the TTRPG is going to be glitching. So if you were to roll a fail when using any pre-tech that you don't know about, that you've not researched, it will glitch, and there'll be a big, like D100 table of potential glitches, which run from, okay, it emits a sound, or it stops working for D6 hours, to it explodes, or it becomes, sentient, something like that. It starts speaking in Latin or something. So it's going to be really risky using pre-tech, but at the same time, it'll be the difference between like one thing I was thinking about today is okay, if you were to shoot someone with a pistol in the game, it would do, let's say, okay, 3d6 damage, or 3d10 damage. And then if you were to hit someone, it would do 1d3 damage or something. 1d4, sorry. Whereas if you were to hit someone with a pre-tech arm, it would do equal to like a gunshot. So it would be 3d10 damage. So it's super, super powerful. You can use it to break down a door. You could use pre-tech legs to jump high into a tree, or to easily climb like the face of a cliff. But if you were to fail and it glitches and you've not researched it, then there would be some problems. And then researching it would be a whole thing as well. It'd be a difficult thing to do. It'd be a long process. But if you research it and you know what it does, you go to a person, you pay them, or you find some kind of manuscript which describes that kind of technology. It would mean that it would only glitch on a critical fail, which is, it's like essentially like a 5% chance in the mothership system. So that's kind of the idea with it in general. And once your fines fent, kind sir. I don't understand. What do you mean, fines fent? Does the forest spread through the entire world, or is it only Britain? So it's based in the British Isles. So if you were to look at a map of the UK, it's the same kind of area. And so yeah, it's just in the UK. The Ireland is present. I haven't really done anything about Ireland, but with Scotland and Wales, it's present, and so the forest stretches into those areas. The main forest, the Great Forest, stretches for the majority of the island. We were just talking about this a little bit earlier, but essentially it goes that far, but it also breaks off into different, wild landscapes as well. Like, for example, a big fern forest was an idea of mine because I love ferns, or a heathland, which is a very typical kind of, northern European landscape with these big purple bushes. So yeah, there's a few ideas related to that, but yeah. Into them and burn, melts, and corrupts them, and their flesh, giving them a monster. Like, look, I'll put a picture in the Discord. Oh yes, please. Yeah. If you want to put your world, your project in the Discord as well, that I would really appreciate that, because that sounds awesome. Especially with magic. I was talking to I was talking to let me have a look. Oh yeah, Trival Stav. So he's in the Discord as well. We were talking a bit earlier, and he's helping his friend make a magic system, and he's got a cool magic system as well, where it's kind of like built off of machines. It's built off of using catalysts essentially to help you do magic. But the more you use it, the more effect it has on your body. So I think there's a few ideas for magic in the world building in the Discord channel at the moment, but they all seem like really intriguing, and definitely I'd love to see more for sure. It's always good to see alternatives, especially when it comes to like complicated magic systems and things like that. Would you consider creating a place for most of the weird folk? I'm imagining a place similar to the Underdark for D&D, a giant expanse of caves beneath the Green Sea. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely. When I was thinking about, again, I'm kind of getting beyond myself here with ideas, but when I was thinking about potentially doing a supplement for this TTRPG where it would explain how to run like a weird folk game, I might even just do it in the main player guide. An aspect of it would be, again, being chastised and being separated from society. So you would have these communities within a city that essentially live in the slums, and they can't really get real work, like customer facing work. They have to do things like scavenging, or they work for the troll hunters, or they um, work as assassins or thieves because they can't get real work. So it wouldn't be so much a society, but maybe more of just slums full of these kind of people. It's a bit like in The Witcher, where you have these more fantastical creatures like the elves and the dwarves who live kind of separate to society. They've been a bit forced out from the rest of the world. But yes, so they don't have their own place to live, but they kind of live on the outskirts. I also considered them making them, a lot of them are trying to move north to Caledonia, where the Queen of the Fae is kind of inviting anyone who wants to come, and it's like it's considered to be a much more open society where people can supposedly live in harmony, but she accepts everyone from every creed and every size and shape and origin. So that's an idea, but again, it's something that's in the works. Getting bots. That's my second bot. So far, just ignore that. I'm gonna quick go on to Twitch and delete that. Actually, sorry, 1 second. So, how rare is it to find a pre-tech ruined factory? Great question. I would say, how do I remove? Let me go on my Twitch channel dashboard. So essentially, the pre-tech exists in the Great Forest. A lot of it is in the Great Forest, and it's kind of an aspect of the acceleration where the pre-tech exists there, and a lot of things grow around the pre-tech, and it's kind of a hint at why the acceleration happened. It's because of whatever caused it is related to the pre-tech. So a lot of these larger areas with a lot of pre-tech in it are just completely overgrown. They're like trees growing inside and completely filled with animals and trolls, and dragons kind of hoard things there. And essentially where there is most pre-tech that has not been taken is where the world is most dangerous. So yeah, I would say it's essentially. Can I? Sorry, I'm trying to delete this this thing this bot has written. I don't know how to do it. Can I delete that? No. Okay, we'll just ignore it. Anyway, so yes, good question. So a lot of people look for pre-tech because it's a big job in the acceleration. A lot of people go out into the world, and if you've got no other choices, like as a maybe a runaway from the fire wardens, or as a weird folk person like Faye, you end up in a situation where you're forced to do jobs like that, like scavenging for pre-tech. So again, it'll be like a potential mission maybe players can do in the TTRPG as well. I have a basic magic system, but I'm thinking about reworking it. Are there pre-tech golems that can move? Cool. Yeah. I would say I don't know how developed your world is. I can't really give you advice in terms of world building, just because I'm obviously not very developed in my own. But one thing I would say is, if you like an idea, like with your magic system, if there's like an element that you really like, just try and expand on that, and just ask yourself a bunch of questions like, okay, how does it work? How does it smell? How does it look? How does it feel? Can people sense your magic? How do am I able to create something? Am I able to destroy something? And I found that's helped me in a lot of elements with the acceleration, just kind of forcing myself to do the things that I like most, and then just expanding on them by asking myself a bunch of questions. You might find that helps you to kind of develop your magic system further. But yeah, sorry, are there any golems? So yeah, kind of. They're called drones, And drones are not like, in the modern sense. I mean, they are as well. Like this is a drone, for example. But drones can also be walking on like spider legs, or they can be like humanoid looking. And so these drones essentially act like golems. They're constructs which are animated and almost like self-sufficient and can move around to an extent. Nice. So a lot of kilts have this like little pouch thing. None of these guys have it. I like this one here. I need to just draw it a bit better, I think. I'm liking how this guy is coming out. I haven't been super efficient this stream, I don't think. I've done okay. It's kind of a cool equipment list. The drone stands out a bit. I might have to do a bit more work on that, but it's looking quite cool at the moment. I still need to draw the scabbard for the sword, the bullets for the guns, the warm pair of socks, very important. Oops. The scanner, the scabbard for the dagger, and maybe like a pack of food or something. It's supposed to be like a general idea. I think a lot of people like to do these images for their own D&D characters, or like a lot of people do them as like commission work for other people's stuff. But it's kind of fun, especially if you've got like magic items like in D&D. I think it can be a cool little piece to have in general. Some quick socks. I don't know if anyone else uses Twitch. Does anyone know how to delete comments? I'm not sure how to delete the bot. Obviously, don't follow that link. I don't think it's a good one. Users in chat. I don't know. Okay. Well, it doesn't matter. Nobody follow that link. I think that's the best way to say it. Nice. Yeah, so yeah, like I was saying, in the Discord, essentially the idea is I'm hoping to develop a bit of a community to kind of help people with like these kind of questions. Like, I'm still not sure exactly a lot of the TTRPG elements. I've never really developed one. I've run a lot of games, and I like to play. I like to be the DM or the warden or whatever. So I want to be able to do the same thing. I want, but because I've never made any, like expansions for any games, I've customized a bunch of pre-made adventures. I think it's always good to get people's advice on these kind of topics. So yeah, if you're into world building, or if you do have advice on that, please do join in and help me with that. I'm gonna be posting. I think I'm maybe gonna add a chat element in Discord about TTRPGs in general, and maybe TTRPG creation, to see if anyone else is doing the same thing. Oh, these socks are way too big for little Robin. Let's squash them. Another thing, if anyone's interested, I have an absolutely free Patreon. There's no paid for elements on there at all. I'm not really sure what I can sell, so that's the kind of idea at the moment. I'm essentially using it as a free newsletter, like instead of like an email newsletter, because I think every time I post on there, you'll get an email anyway. So on there, it's going to be just bi-weekly news, so news every 2 weeks, related to what's going on, what I've done in the last 2 weeks in terms of the channel and the TTRPG. And so, if you do want to keep up to date with that kind of stuff, if you're interested at all, I'd definitely recommend it. I think it's, a very, again, I've only posted on there once so far, but it's going to be a bit more in depth. I also post some of my recommendations and things on there. Again, if you want to just get something new to read or a video game to play, that kind of stuff. So I've just posted that on the YouTube. Ooh, No. Okay, I didn't do a very good job because I didn't post the right link. But yeah, like I said, if anyone's interested, I would say it's a good place to kind of keep up to date with information on the project. I'll post it on here as well. Boop. Could you make a fish fay that looks like Tam Kench? I don't know who Tam Kench is. Tam Kench. Oh, from League of Legends. Okay. So I actually started drawing some fish characters. I'll show you. I showed this quite briefly in the previous stream. Oh, here you go. Look. So I love them. I think they're very funky. They're not really obviously based on any British fish. I think I used a concept for the eye maybe, but they're kind of funky dudes. And again, it was like kind of conceptualizing how they would look with their heads point straight up. Would they be kind of stuck in the middle of their chest? How would their arms look? That kind of thing. So, yeah, definitely. I'm going to do more fish fay in the future. Maybe like Tam Kench. But I definitely want to explore a few different ideas for, different animals that are a bit weirder and a bit different. Other than just very typical little robins and things like that. Oh gosh, look at the time. Right, I'm gonna finish up this. I might just quickly do this controller, and then I'm gonna think about ending the stream just because I have lots to do tomorrow. Does anyone else have any cool ideas or for Faye or kind of different aspects or any other questions? I'm happy to answer as well. Does the UK have catfish? I don't think so, unless they're invasive. Catfish UK. Animal, not the TV show. Oh, we do. Okay. In the UK, the Wells catfish is the most common and largest freshwater fish species, referred to as the catfish. Oh wow! I never knew that. So yeah, I guess so. We've got lots of big fish and like some big scary fish in the in the UK, but I never knew we had catfish. So yeah, definitely. So I guess I could do pretty much exactly a one that looks like that Tam Kench character that you mentioned. Cool. So I think we did pretty well. I think there was a lot of doodling during the stream and kind of going back and forth between images and looking at some other stuff. So yeah, pretty efficient. I would say we didn't do too bad. Oh, sorry. I think your message is just loaded now. Is there any limit on how big dragons can get? Good question. I would say yes. I would say they can get to a certain size. I think the largest is probably going to be pretty big. If we have a quick look at the dragon images again, like the owl is in the image is huge, the size of about the size of a house, as is the stag phase is pretty massive as well. Oh, there you go. I can't remember who was asking about weasels earlier, but a little dude with his big gun. So they get very, very big. Raja, the Dragon of Enlightenment, is a huge peacock. So in terms of scale, yeah, pretty massive, I would say. But I would say there's going to be a limit. I'm not going to do them as kind of titans or like kaiju type thing, where it's just they'll be impossible to defeat. I would say their limitation is probably based on their food source. So a lot of them will be eating fish and like large fish and large animals and trolls and giant animals. So that are fed to them by their cultists or that they have to catch themselves. So I would say, yeah, probably a big one. The Heron Dragon, yeah, good reference. So the Heron Dragon is probably one of the biggest Fae to have existed so far, and that dude was huge because that's the skull of his baby boy, or her baby boy. I can't remember if it's a girl. But yeah, you're right. I think that's a good reference. So some of them do get very big then, yeah. So kind of counteracting what I just said. But I think once they get to a certain size, again, they're limited. I think the idea with the heron is I wanted it to be like a cool like landscape image, and I think that kind of displays it quite well. So some of them, yeah, very 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 big, is the answer to your question, I guess. I'd like to know how a scorpion fae would look. Me too. I think a scorpion fae would be kind of cool. We don't have any native scorpions in the UK. I'm quite confident in that. I'm just going to quickly check. Scorpion, UK. We've got scorpion fish, but no scorpions. Apparently there's some invasive scorpions. Oh, I didn't know that. In yellow-tailed scorpions. But yeah, so it's probably not something that's going to come up. Spiders, yeah, definitely. I love spiders, so they'll probably come up as fae and other, and maybe some different insects. I want to do a dragonfly fae. I had an idea for a bounty hunter dragonfly, which I thought was quite cool. But again, these are all kind of potential ideas for the future. Amazing. Well, thanks guys. I really appreciate everyone stopping by. Thank you for all the questions as well. I think I said it last week, but this week as well, super inspiring for me. Especially when you ask really interesting questions that make me think about things like the size of dragons or the different types of dragons and fae. So I really appreciate everyone stopping by and kind of helping, keeping me motivated as well. Like I said, guys, if anyone's interested, Patreon is where the newsletter is going to be, but the Discord is where I'm hoping to kind of share some more ideas and get to see other people's projects as well. So I think that's a big part of it. It's just being inspired by the community as well, which would be really cool. Thank you, Man in the Red Cape. I really appreciate all the different advice, all the different questions and things like that. So it's good. Yes, and like Travel Staff's saying, he's in the Discord. His project's there as well, so check it out. He's put a lot of work into it so far, and there's loads of really good ideas in there. He's got like a much more methodical way of building, and I think it really shows that he's put a lot of work into it. So it's definitely a good one to check out in the projects folder. But yeah, so if anyone's interested, feel free to drop in. But thanks, guys. I really appreciate everyone stopping by. And I'll be on the same time again next week. Thank you, Lazy Crow. Really appreciate it. I'll be on the same time again next week, so 8:30 UK time on Wednesday. And yeah, thanks again, guys, and I'll see you next time. Hopefully there'll be a YouTube video out before then. I'm hoping to get that finished by this weekend about the Fae, about the Rangers. So this dude will be finished, as well as some of the other images. But we'll talk about that a bit more in the next one. Thanks, guys. Have a good evening or morning, whatever time it is for you, and I'll see you next week. Cheers.